right? Like games,
Yeah,
like
it's not
pre-orders
supposed to
have
sell
been
out.
total like bullshit because you never actually have to pre-order. But you're saying they haven't made it up to Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, someone had pointed that out to me, and then I was looking online at other people planning to do the same thing I am and trying to go get it day of, and they were all like noting, like, by the way, you should try and secure a copy of Breath of the Wild ahead of time because you likely won't be able to find one.
Are you going to go there at 12:01?
I don't know. I was thinking about trying.
Wow.
I'm kind of on the
Well,
fence.
I
but-
got-
That's a bold move.
I got it pre-ordered too, so I'm glad I did because I was like kind of dragging my heels.
All right. Well, we're not talking about Breath of the Wild today, though. We do have some other things. We're coming in live here right now. Hello, this is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly computing podcast where we talk about everything that has to do with computing, usually different specific issues that we'll talk about each week. And we're going live on YouTube and Facebook right now, so we want to hear what you guys think, what your thoughts are, comments. Today, we're going to be talking about GPUs. We've got a new graphics card and a whole new GPU that are supposedly, we're pretty sure, are coming out today. And we're going to talk all about those and get into it here in a second. I'm your host, Greg Nibbler, and to my right is...
I'm Matt Smith, and we're actually not talking about GPUs today because I just saw Stardew Valley is coming to Switch this summer with new multiplayer action. So that's pretty much...
Do you remember when I was saying I was thinking about waiting for the Switch? Now I'm buying one.
So the show is completely tanked.
That's pretty much
my
what
God.
we're going to talk about.
Okay, well, down on the end, let's just
Burke.
go. Brad Burke.
Super excited for Stardew Valley on
AKA Sick Brad. There is a sickness that's going around here that I think everybody's gotten a little bit of. I have a little bit of it, but Sick Brad is a great nickname. I think that's going to have to stick with you.
I usually go by that anyway, so it's fine.
Sick Brad.
yeah, it's
Sounds
kinda
like you're
weird.
in a...
Like he's very insistent about it.
Yeah, call him Sick Brad.
Like,
you're-
hey, Brad. He's like, no, sick Brad.
It's insistent. All his business cards say that now. All right. Well, are we going to talk about graphics cards, or are we going to talk about these?
We're
Switch now?
going to talk
Okay.
about you know what needs graphics in it? It's the Nintendo Switch. So maybe we should talk about the latest graphics technology. Right?
Was that the segue
Uh-huh.
that we're putting in
Good
there? All right. Wow, Matt, you sure have your finger on the pulse right there. That was an excellent
Thank
topic.
you. Thank you. I'm going to go into the podcast team myself.
All right. So, what is leading us to talk about GPUs today? What is it that's come out? Let's kind of just bring everybody up to date on what's going on. You may have seen the Nvidia countdown clock they've got going, and also the Vega news that we have. Just kind of give a brief. Why are we talking about GPUs today?
Well, theoretically, there are two new products coming out today, or two new announcements, two big major shifts in GPU technology today. The first one being, like you said, AMD's Vega event, which is happening, called Capsaicin and Cream, which I promised I wouldn't say in there.
Say that 3 times fast.
Which
Why? Do we even need to get into why it is? Because that's a really odd name for an event.
they like spicy food, I guess. Let's just leave it at that. I think that's close enough.
All right. We'll leave the analogies out of the
Yeah.
way. Okay. All right.
So that's happening at 10:30, or it's starting. I don't know how long exactly that's going to be. And that will very likely involve their new Vega GPU, which is a whole underlying GPU architecture that will sort of hopefully push the upper end of their GPU line up. And then opposite that is tonight is the countdown to the Nvidia event, which they say it's almost time, and they've highlighted TI, as Matt pointed out earlier. So it's almost certainly going to be
Very subtle.
yeah.
Very, very subtle. Yeah,
almost
there's-
certainly the 1080 Ti, which was rumored to release at PAX East in last fall, and then again at CES this year. Didn't show up at either of those places. So this is probably it. We're also right in the middle of GDC, the Game Developer Conference, which is kind of a reason for these things to be happening in San Francisco.
To be coming out at about this time. Well, and I see some comments coming in the chat. Somebody already asked, when can I get it? We're gonna get into these a little bit more here as we go through, kind of analyzing each one of them. But we do want to hear your questions, comments, whatever you think. And I think maybe going to the first one. Do you want to go into the GTX, the 1080 Ti that we are talking about here? So the countdown's going down. We know this is coming out. Let's get the basics out of the way. What are the basics that we know about this?
Well, we kind of don't know a whole lot right now
Okay.
about the 1080 Ti, despite the fact that it's been kind of rumored and sort of floating around for a while. We think they've just recently released a couple of workstation cards, and some people are saying that it's going to be sort of similar to those in terms of equipment, which would mean perhaps high bandwidth memory. This is sort of going to be a theme across both of these. That high bandwidth.
I mean
memory.
HBM.
HBM.
I would be very surprised if it had HBM.
Well, some of their new GPU workstations did, or their workstation GPUs did have it, have HBM2 in them. So it's something that people have been saying might show up. But basically, it's going to fall somewhere in performance between the GTX 1080, which does pretty consistent 4K gaming, and the GTX Titan XP, which is, or not XP, it's the Titan X. People call it the XP because it's the Pascal version of the Titan X with their new GPU. So
And that's like the
that's like a
high-end.
$1,200 card.
That's an
$1,200.
expensive card.
It's a really expensive card. Granted, the GTX 1080 is already like $500-600.
Yeah.
Which is not cheap at all.
Right. But I mean, doubling that for the Titan X, that's a tremendous amount of money. Why did you say you doubt it'll have HBM?
Because that would be a bit of a change to the format of the 1080 itself, to the overall structure of the card. And usually the 1080 Ti, the Ti is just like, it's an upgraded version of the card that already exists.
Okay.
It has more stuff, but
The same underlying.
correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, but usually I can't remember the Ti's ever being like just like different stuff.
No, but they could be. I mean, it wouldn't be I don't think it would be a huge change to change the card structure itself and use, especially if you're using an existing, like the GP. I can't remember the numbers of them, but the GP that's in the Titan, the GP that's in the 1080, to see that chip paired up with a different memory structure, I don't think would be terribly surprising.
I'll say right now that
We're gonna take some bets here.
yeah.
That's what's going on? Okay.
I will bet $10 that it doesn't have HBM.
I'll take that bet.
Okay.
All right. What?
Why not?
10 bucks? 10 bucks is a bet right here. You guys have to shake on this. So we'll find out
to wash your
soon.
hands
I have to wash my hands after.
yeah, that's true. Sick Brad got you again.
I'm the real winner.
So that announcement comes out tonight.
We'll
just,
see that
just
tonight,
to clarify,
yeah.
because I'm going to be watching now to find out who owes who $10. All right, so we have the sides chosen on the HBM, but what else can we know about this? What else do we know? What can we? I know we don't have a lot of information, but what can we expect? Like, why do you think this is a card that should be coming out right now?
Well,
The timing's right. I mean, like,
Yeah.
as far as that goes,
Just
it's
to get
like,
an update?
This is the time that it would come out. It's been rumored. It's been floating around. We've seen a lot of things like file names and job hiring posts and things like that have sort of pointed to this existing. And
yeah, and it's. I mean, having it now. I mean, it makes sense to do it with the GDC. It also makes sense to sort of head off some of AMD's hype. Because you know,
it is kind of a
as we're going
competing-
to talk here in a little bit, AMD has its own thing. So by coming out with a 1080 Ti now, Nvidia does sort of be able to say, well, look, we've got this thing that we're putting out, and they'll probably have it out sooner. So they can kind of boast about still having like the high end performance,
Sure.
like being the card that you get if you want the fastest. So that's probably why they're doing it now. I mean, honestly, like they probably could have waited longer because there's still not really an AMD competitor to this card.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they've also already waited pretty long. It's been like 6 months
Yeah, about
now
that.
since the 1080 came out. So I mean, it's getting about time to stoke the fires of hype with a new card.
But the thing is, with going with a card with this high end, higher than the 1080 that they already have, not as high as the Titan X, is it necessary to really have that card? Like, who's even going to be able to use something like this, or who would utilize something like this?
Well, I think is it necessary? I mean, none of these cards are really necessary, but I do
Okay.
see where you could want a 1080 Ti because with resolutions going up, there's still a lot of headroom for super high-end GPUs.
Yeah.
A 1080 Ti or a regular GTX 1080 is not really a card that I would say you can use for 4K gaming.
Okay.
It can play a lot of older games in less the medium demanding modern games quite well at that resolution, but if you try to play something like Deus Ex at the highest settings and on a 4K monitor, you can't do it with the 1080, and you really can't do it with any single card. And a lot of people don't want to have multi-GPU setups. It takes up more room. It's less reliable. So
And you don't get a full efficiency either.
you
For your
don't.
dollar
Yeah,
there.
you don't get the complete power out of your second card.
Okay.
Power per dollar. So yeah,
So this sounds like it is actually going to serve a.
Yeah, I think
need
there's there's still a dream of having a card that does, up to 4K gaming, or the higher resolution new 21:9 monitors that are just a little less than 4K in the pixel counts, and having a card that can handle those and do all the games at high settings. With one card, and we still don't have that.
Okay.
So,
and just to tell everybody who's tuning in right now, if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, talking about the anticipated release of the GTX 1080 Ti from Nvidia later on today, and seeing some comments that are coming in. Let's see, on YouTube, Brad says, hype, harsh Matt, saying, I guess you're a little bit harsh there. Just letting you know that.
Oh no,
Matt disagrees. Yeah, he's clearly not gonna. He's not gonna handle that. All right, and Rob says I'm gonna hold on to my GTX 1070 for now. It was an upgrade from the GTX 570 SC. I'm gonna wait. So some people might be waiting if that's what they're doing.
This is.
Go ahead.
I mean, like I've started to see some builds out there and like pictures of people like, wow, look at my high end build with 2 GTX 1080s, and I think that is the point at which Nvidia is going to start looking to put out a new card, because there is a market for people who want to spend
that much money,
$1,200 or $1,000 on a graphics card.
That's a lot of money on a graphics card.
It's so much money, and you know, and like you're saying, like if you have a 1060, like that's going to work for most people.
Yeah,
you know, like that's like the right performance level, I think, for a lot of people, and I think we still are seeing, you know, especially if you take a look at the Steam hardware survey, I'll pull it up now. Most people play at 1080p.
Yeah,
most people play at 1080p, and actually. That's sort of a split market usually between that and 1136 by 768. Those are the resolutions that most people are playing at. In fact, so 39.10% of the Steam hardware survey was 1080p. 24.81 was 768. Even like 1440p was like less than 2% of the entire.
Yeah, and 4K is like 0.5%.
0.2 right now.
So I mean, like these aren't volume cards, but the thing is that. And this is why I don't think they're going to go with HBM. To get back to that, you know, what Nvidia is going to do is they're going to tweak this card. They're going to, add on some more cores. They're going to up the clock speed. None of this. They're going to probably put on more RAM. None of this is really a very expensive thing to Nvidia to do.
Although they can charge $600
yeah,
for it, sounds
well,
like.
then they're going to charge like probably $900 to $1,000 for the 1080 Ti, and it just makes them a bunch of money. And they'll sell a lot of them, but, you know, like they're making a lot of money off of each card, and that's great for them. And then, you know, those people that do have 4K monitors have a card that they can purchase.
Well, I think Max has a kind of a point here on Facebook. Max says, I'm holding on to 770 until a card that will come out that can do 4K easily for the next few years. Do you think this would be a card to go for that if you want to like plan for the future and just get into it right now, and assuming more 4K is rolling out? Or
I think the power jump we saw from the 900 series to the 1000 series is going to be probably about the same to the next series of GPUs. And that sort of thing is you can kind of hop on this train whenever you want to. But at the same time, if your goal is solid 4K gaming, I don't think this is going to be the generation to do it. I don't even think that 1080 Ti is going to be... Because right now, really, if you're playing in 4K, you're playing at 60 frames per second, because there are very few, if any, 4K screens at more than 60 hertz.
Joe makes that point on Facebook, too. Yeah, the monitor.
And they're very slowly starting to trickle out there that people are sort of saying, oh, this is our 4K screen. I saw one that was like 144 hertz OLED that was beautiful, but regardless, those are not screens that, again, like most people are going to have, and so I think it's important to remember, like, that's your sort of goal right now, is to hit that 60 frames per second. And I don't think even one card, I don't think that 1080 Ti is going to produce the kind of frame rates you need to consistently do that, especially, you say, for a couple of years. Like,
yeah,
that's, I mean, games like Deus Ex kind of surprised us, because I think we were sort of starting to see at E3 last year, we were sort of discussing this idea of a plateau in PC gaming demands. That we were starting to hit this point where, like, we were getting really photorealistic and we were producing it really well, and that there wasn't much of a need to continue pushing any further because of the serious amount of development resources it takes to do so. And then Deus Ex kind of threw that whole thing into the wind and was like, no, we're going to do crazy lighting and dark shadows everywhere, and you're always running around in a futuristic city with translucent screens everywhere, and it really kind of shot that theory in the butt. So.
There's other games that do that. Forza Horizon 3, for example, is a very demanding game. If you want to crank that up at like 4K and maximum detail, it is gorgeous, but it is very difficult to run.
Yeah, the underlying hardware that you need for something like that.
To talk about the point of whether or not a 1080 Ti would be that card that would give you future-proofing at 4K, to get in some specifics, the TI has not been announced, but there's been speculation and rumors about what it actually is going to consist of. And the rumors are pretty much following in line with what the jump was from the 980 to the 980 Ti. So you're looking at probably...
That's actually an exact question that just came in on YouTube. Yeah.
So probably a 1080 has 2,560 CUDA cores.
Okay.
The rumors are saying 3,328 for the 1080 Ti.
Okay.
So that's about a 30% jump. And the
what about FPS?
Well, I don't know about the FPS
Okay.
because that's something you have to test a card for. But
Okay.
the clock speed is a little lower, so probably the 1080 Ti is going to be around 25% faster than the 1080. It's also going to have more RAM, but that's probably kind of irrelevant. It's just kind of a spec sheet number.
Okay.
So based on what we've seen from testing the 1080, and I would say that that's not enough of a jump to expect future proofing at 4K.
So not worth it.
Now, I guess where you would really see future proofing is if you were going to pair the 1080 Ti with either a 1440p monitor or a, say, 3440 by 1440 21:9 ultra-wide monitor. That's something you could put in there and get quite a few years of very good performance.
Even
out of
now with
something
the
like a
advancements
1080 Ti.
that are happening, you'd still be in the same.
Yeah.
Joe says, "Why are we talking about 4K now? 5K is around the corner, and companies have been talking about it. Let alone 6K and 8K."
I don't know. Let's talk about 12K.
But I get, yeah, like that's. I mean,
But
yeah,
the
sure.
game-
But again, like people aren't
Yeah. The
people aren't
content.
even really moving towards those resolutions at a rate you would expect. Like
Right.
more people are moving from lower resolutions into 1080p. That's like the largest growth category
Yeah.
in general.
Let alone
like
this.
that is what people are buying. They're buying 1080p displays. Should you buy a 1440? Yeah, I think they're really nice looking, but
Yeah.
nobody else is buying this.
Yeah.
Like very few people are playing at higher resolutions.
Yeah,
So-
I love 4K displays, but the fact of the matter is that the adoption rate's been really low. So
It's just not there yet. The market's
for
not there.
computers, we're not going to see that become a big thing until the prices drop a lot more and you have something where people are going into Best Buy and getting a $250 4K monitor.
Right. How far out do you think we are from something like that?
Probably a couple years from that
Yeah.
happening, and even then, adoption will start to roll. I mean, like as Brad said, 1080p is still the standard for PC gaming, really, and I think the two of us would consider 1080p to be kind of a low resolution.
Yeah.
But like that's just what most people have because that's what has been affordable for a very long time, and that's what the mainstream is. It's like what's been affordable and
Right.
available for a while.
Right. I mean, and
So-
you two are definitely early adopters for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
I mean, it's your job if nothing else. But yeah, that's interesting that people are still rolling into 1080p. So 4K really is that far out. So we're talking about the GTX 1080 Ti that's anticipated to be coming out from Nvidia. It's pretty much that's what's coming out, and what we expect to see from that, kind of what the details are, and taking your questions live on Facebook and YouTube as well. Should we move on to the other announcement that
Sure.
that is going to be coming out as well? I think this one's coming pretty soon, and it has to do with the AMD Vega. And maybe Brad, you can give kind of a briefing on what we know so far about this.
Matt would probably be
Matt?
better.
So Vega is the next big GPU architecture from AMD. And it is a very big one because so AMD's been using basically even the RX. This is true even of the new RX cards, a variation of graphics core Next since about 2011. And Vega is going to drastically change the architecture to go along with sort of the new design philosophies that have become big at AMD and which are applicable to not just GPUs but also CPUs. And we can't really talk about the CPUs yet. Ryzen stuff is coming out later this week, but for Vega, one of the big talking points is scalability.
Okay.
Focused on memory architecture. A focus on how data is moved around the card. So Vega, for example, is going to go with HBM2 memory. And the idea there is that it's going to, well, we saw this on the HBM high bandwidth memory on the Fury cards first. AMD Fury, which came out last year. Is that right?
Yeah. No, the year before.
Oh, was it the year before?
Yeah.
And basically, these are alternative to the usual GDDR graphics, and they provide a much higher capacity per chip. So they can be put together on a much smaller overall card space. So those Fury cards I mentioned that came out the year before last, which are still like pretty much the high-end AMD cards, they're actually quite small and compact. And this also allows for the memory to be very close to the GPU. And AMD says it's focusing on making sure that memory is very quickly accessible. With the idea being that, so the broad idea here is that game developers are forced to store a lot of content in graphics memory right now because they need to make sure the game never stalls. If a situation occurs where you're walking along in the game and the game suddenly realizes that it needs some asset that is not actually loaded into memory and readily available, then the game's going to have to go back to hard drive for that, or potentially system RAM. Depends on the situation.
Yeah.
So that's a lot slower, and then you're going to get like a hitch, and that's really unacceptable.
Right.
In games. So generally, games, we have seen this with a lot of recent games actually. Some of them, especially their higher detail settings, are taking up a lot of memory space. And AMD thinks that they can decrease the amount of time it requires to get new assets. They can store assets more efficiently and sort of get around this problem. So that's one of the big things with Vega.
And that's the line to try to take care of that situation.
Yeah,
Is adding
yeah.
more.
They also are changing around their geometry pipeline, increasing the throughput. They're quoting per clock throughput per clock has been doubled. And this is all stuff that was from CES, so this isn't new information. Right. And they're doing a variety of techniques with balancing the load to make sure that assets are the instructions are being executed as efficiently as possible.
Okay.
And basically all of this is focused on just making a much more efficient chip overall. And again, this is stuff that mirrors what AMD is talking about with Zen. They've been talking since the beginning of talking about Zen. They've been focusing on efficiency, scalability, proper use of memory. So that's all very interesting.
Yeah.
With Vega, though, we are still at a point where we don't really have an idea of what that's going to mean in the end product.
So as far as what we're going to see with these specific graphic cards
right.
on this line? Okay.
And that's what we might hopefully find out a little bit more about today. In fact, the live stream is going to begin in 7 minutes.
Yeah, that is true.
So 10:30 Pacific is when the AMD live stream starts.
So yeah, hang with us then until then, and then go ahead and hop over there if you're watching live right now. And I put in there too, if you have any questions or things that maybe Matt and Brad could clarify as far as what they anticipate with it, feel free to drop those in there, and I'll get those on there. So like you said, they did show this off at CES.
Yeah, they've shown it off at CES. They showed it off before that.
Yeah, and they showed off at the Ryzen
at the
launch,
Ryzen
right?
sort of announcement event. They had a working. There's been sort of this working Vega prototype that's been making the rounds at some AMD events. I saw it myself. It runs Battlefront, Star Wars.
Yeah, I think you
Battlefront.
At
4K looks great, but it's not really something that you can get I mean, we haven't benchmarked it. It's just
Yeah.
running the thing at 4K and it looks good, and that's about all I can say about it right now.
Just kind of take their word on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's to be expected. I mean, they're not really at a release state yet with this, and that's sort of the difference right now between the GTX 1080 Ti that we just talked about and what AMD has going. We're not sure what AMD is going to say at this event. They're probably going to provide a lot more details. They potentially could provide an indication of what the product stack is going to look like in pricing, although I'm not sure they're going to do that.
But we don't have a release date.
But yeah, we don't have a release
anything.
date. We don't have that pricing yet. That's still all up in the air.
Okay. So it's a lot of speculation as far as what we're going to get, even though they've been teasing this for a long time.
Yeah,
and
they have
showing
been teasing it
off.
for a long time. And AMD fans have been... every time we publish something about Vega, AMD fans are like, oh, so someone says, like, when's it going to come out?
Yeah.
And then someone else says, oh, don't worry, it'll be next month. And it's like, no, man, it's probably not next month. And I still think it's probably not next month. I think it's probably more of a summer thing.
Yeah, I think they were saying they were targeting the first half of 2017 or something. So it was kind of
Okay, so it's
sometime in the next 6 months, maybe. Would be
and
nice.
then they probably won't even give it at this event that they're going to be having in just a few
Well, they
minutes.
did. I'm trying to remember how they did because I think this has a lot of parallels between this and the Fury launch. In that, in Nvidia, you see sort of just a gradient of cards across their offering. They're sort of like if you want to spend $100 or $400, you can kind of like pick your price level. Whereas with AMD, they're doing sort of the same thing they did last time, where they have their kind of mainstream, like a few cards in their budget line, and then they have their sort of like, apart from that, their high-end Fury. And I think we might see sort of a similar thing here, where the RX, this isn't going to be the RX 490 for $350. This is going to be the, whatever SKU comes out will be some sort of like, it'll be maybe the Fury or the something else, and that'll be sort of a separate product line with a separate set of offerings and a separate target audience than this, like, especially because they've worked so hard towards this idea of like everyone spends $100 to $300 on a GPU, so $200 is the sweet spot, and that's the RX 480. I think it'd be really hard to fit this sort of like high bandwidth memory, high power enthusiast option into that marketing schema.
Right,
So
it's just
it
going to
will
be too
sort of
high
like,
of a...
everybody's probably going to get the RX 480, and if you want to go big, here's your card.
Just go to this Vega
Yeah.
line, and go with those
And we might
ones.
even see a similar thing where there aren't really performance differences as much as there are a series of different form factors across one GPU.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, getting to here, kind of wrapping it up again, talking about the GTX 1080 Ti, we anticipate to come out from Nvidia and the AMD Vega line that, they've got an announcement coming up shortly. So, Brad, you wrote something in here talking about release and pricing expectations, but a paper launch. You call it a paper launch. Can you explain what that is, just really quick?
So that's like, I think what we'll probably end up seeing with the 1080 Ti, where NVIDIA may even come out today and say, the card is available. It's for sale. Go buy it. Go buy a Founders one, or go buy it tomorrow or in the next few days. And there will be very, very few of those cards available on the onset. And they'll also say, our MSRP, I'm guessing here, it'll say $799 or $899. And then the first cards you'll see will be EVGA coming out and saying, oh, well, you can buy our for the Win Edition. That's only $1,300. And that'll be sort of the way, if you want to buy one of these 1080 Ti's, I wouldn't advise trying to do it in the first month that they're
Really?
on
The first
market.
month it's out
a
there?
couple weeks
Just
at
wait.
least. Like, especially with a card that has so much hype around it, you're going to have a lot of trouble finding it at a reasonable price. Finding it anywhere close to that MSRP, or even probably picking up a Founders Edition if they do something like that again.
Yeah, I mean, definitely be careful with it. This is true pretty much of all video card launches these days. It seems like 'cause we had an episode about this, a while back. The cards are tending to be rather expensive when they come out. They're going for more than MSRP often, so make sure you know what that MSRP is before you buy anything. And if it's a lot more, make sure you know why.
Right.
Sometimes, I mean, as Brad said, sometimes what will happen also is you'll get like the overclocked version for the Win Edition or whatever from different manufacturers, and that's all you'll be able to find. And you might think maybe, it's a little bit more, but hey, I'm getting the special edition. But, you got to be careful with that because sometimes the special editions really aren't that special.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen if something's overclocked by like 10%, and a lot of times video cards end up being overclocked by pretty small amounts, like it's not going to make a meaningful difference in your
Yeah,
experience.
and 10% is a lot when you're already at
Yeah,
that high of a
and
price.
that's only like that's
far
with
as
the video
price-wise.
cards that the scaling between how much is overclocked and the performance you get tends to be pretty poor. So you might end up looking at like a 5% increase in performance from that.
Right, but a 10% in price.
Which you're not going to notice in like actual gameplay, really.
Yeah.
So got to be careful.
So do your homework. That's kind of the main.
Also, keep an eye out for GTX 1080s in the next month or two after this card comes out.
Yeah.
Because you may end up with people who were running, two 1080 options who are trying to get rid of their cards now and trying to move on to the 1080 Ti. The
good
video
value.
card releases tend to be good times to pick up used cards, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So keep a watch out on that. And just finally, when we can expect the cards, that's kind of what we're talking about. We don't really know. They could announce it, that it's available today. We'll just have to wait and see for as far as the Nvidia one. The AMD Vega, not today. Really don't think that's
still
going to
be a
happen.
little while out. So if you're an AMD fan, sorry, you still got a little bit of time to wait.
I would guess less than 6 months before those cards start to make their way to market.
Yeah.
At this point, it better be. I mean,
yeah, I would. Yeah, no. At this point, it better be. People are chomping at the bit for them. So
Yeah, it seems like it's been going on long enough. So, all right, well, that's today's show. So this is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly podcast computing show where we go in depth on specific topics, and we have a lot of back episodes out there. They're available on video on our YouTube channel or at digitaltrends.com/podcasts. You can find all of our different podcasts there, and we have the audio version too. So it's on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Just find Digital Trends Close to the Metal and subscribe on there. Subscribe on YouTube and all of that. And yeah, take a look at the back episodes. We've done a lot on GPUs, so if you're interested in this topic, there's a lot of information on there and a lot of discussions that we've had. And we love having you guys involved too. So please join us every Tuesday. Tuesday now is when we were doing this, live at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And join us here live, or you can always send in an email afterward or comment on the videos or posts, and we will get back to you on whatever your questions are. All right, thanks a lot for watching. We're back next week with another episode. Sick brain.